union budget is very easy. Half marks question you can expect based on this one, or sometimes it is 1 marks also, but it is doable. Budget is all about the income. It is also known as आपका annual financial plan. So income and expenditure. So income, like we have two type of budget. We have revenue budget, we have capital budget. Revenue income, आपका income from taxes and non taxes. आपका revenue expenditure on government's day to day activities. Capital budget, capital income, borrowings of the governments, domestic and international, and capital expenditure on creating permanent asset. Okay, so if it comes to the revenue receipt आपका, in case of receipt of governments, so tax revenue, it can be आपका gross tax revenue like corporation tax, income tax, wealth tax, GST, other taxes, and this team. So net tax revenue, how we, this part is important. Net tax revenue, gross tax revenue minus NCCD transfer to national calamity contingency funds minus state shares. Okay, this is the formula through which we generally calculate the net tax revenue. We have practiced some, हमने इसमें ना कुछ आपका केस स्टडीज भी प्रैक्टिस किए थे टॉपिक के अंदर. Tax revenue, non-tax revenue. Non-tax revenue is like fine, penalties, dividends and all of the government. Okay? So आपका revenue income is further divided between two parts. आपका tax revenue, these are the sources for the tax revenue. Then non-tax revenue, okay? Other than taxes like fine, challans and all these come under this. Okay? Interest, receipt, dividend and profit, external grants, आपका other non-tax revenue, receipt of union territories. Okay? टोटल रेवेन्यू रिसिप्ट पे आपका नेट टैक्स रेवेन्यू प्लस नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू, दैट इज योर टोटल वन आपका. ठीक है, चलो. सो नाउ द कैपिटल रिसिप्ट, आपका नॉन डेट रिसिप्ट, रिकवरीज ऑफ लोन एंड एडवांसेस and disinvestment receipt, like disinvestment in public sector enterprises and all, that is a, this was a question, now I recall this particular one. ठीक है, there was a half marks question around this one कि जो disinvestment आपका होता है, how we generally categorize this particular one. Then we have debt receipt, market borrowings, government securities, treasury bills, security against small savings, आपका state provident funds, other receipt and external debt also. ठीक है. So then next one we have plan expenditure. So plan expenditure which include revenue expenditure, central plan and central assistant for state and union territories. Capital expenditure आपका same things. ठीक है. So basically it is expenditure on creating permanent assets आपका, ठीक है, this capital वाला side, and this is आपका expenditure on day-to-day functioning of government departments or government initiatives and all. They generally comes under this. Employee आपका government scheme subsidies and all, they are generally part of this particular one. ठीक है, तो थोड़ा सा इनको आप लोग ध्यान रखेंगे तो हेल्प करेगा. जैसे रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर आपका डिफेंस, इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स एंड प्री पेमेंट्स, प्रीमियम, सब्सिडीज, ग्रांट्स, पेंशन, पुलिस, असिस्टेंट टू स्टेट फ्रॉम नेशनल कैलेमिटी contingency fund, economic services like this, other general services, social service, postal. Capital आपका defense, non-plan capital outlay, loan to public enterprises, state and UTs, and loan to foreign governments and others. ठीक है, so the non-plan expenditure is equal to revenue non-plan expenditure plus capital non-plan expenditures. Deficit part is again very important. So we have आपका revenue deficit, when revenue income is less than revenue expenditure. Effective revenue deficit आपका, it is revenue deficit minus grant in aid for the creation of capital assets. Fiscal deficit, the most important one. Fiscal deficit is excess of the total expenditure including loan, net of recoveries over revenue receipt excluding external grants and आपका नॉन डेट रिसिट. ठीक है, प्राइमरी डेफिसिट आपका द फाइनल वन, द डिफरेंस बिटवीन फिस्कल डेफिसिट एंड इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट. ठीक है, सो प्राइमरी डेफिसिट इज योर डिफरेंस बिटवीन फिस्कल डेफिसिट एंड आपका माइनस इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स. ठीक है, सो दैट जनरली कम्स अंडर दिस पर्टिकुलर वन. ठीक है, सो दिस इज अबाउट योर मॉड्यूल बी. सो अंटिल विच ईयर was union budget presented on the last working day of February. So prior to 2017 budget, so the union budget you get like they used to present that particular one on the last working day of February, ठीक है. So mostly it is 28, sometimes it is 29 also, ठीक है. And if it is 28 is Sunday, so it was 27, right? But now from Union Budget 2017 onwards, we start presenting this particular one on 1st of February, ठीक है. So what will be your correct answer? 2017 was the last budget which get presented on last working day of February. 2017 onwards, we start presenting budget on the first day of February. Okay? So budget is basically defined as financial statements of the government. Okay? So basically it is income and expenditure statement. It is defined under Article 112 of Indian Constitution. So it is annual financial plan. Okay? So financial year, we have 1st April to 31st March. एंड फिनेंशियल प्लान इज ऑल अबाउट इनकम एंड एक्सपेंडिचर. ठीक है, तो एक पूरे साल भर का जो आपका आय और व्यय का लेखा जोखा है, ठीक है, दैट इज जनरली नोन एज बजट. ठीक है, तो बजट आपका, ये आप लोगों ने बहुत बार पढ़ा भी होगा और बहुत आसान है अंडरस्टैंडिंग वाइज. ठीक है, कौन से ऐसे एरियाज हैं जहां से क्वेश्चन बन सकते हैं, दैट वी आर डिस्कसिंग विद द हेल्प ऑफ दीस वन. ठीक है, तो द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज which of the following statement about government receipt are correct. So whenever you talk about the receipt, so as we discussed with this previous one, so whenever we talk about the budget or the annual financial plan, so it has two major component, or like you can say it is like we have two type of budget. One is revenue budget, revenue, and another one is capital. So similarly we have two type of income, revenue income and revenue expenditure. We have capital income, and capital expenditure. So this is the overall format. So that means we have two major sources of income. One is revenue income. Basically these are the income which we generally generate from the different sources of the government. So जो सरकार की इनकम होती है, मेजरली इट इज डिवाइडेड बिटवीन टू पार्ट. वन इज आपका टैक्स इनकम, अनदर वन इज नॉन टैक्स इनकम. ठीक है, सो टैक्स एंड नॉन टैक्स इन केस ऑफ रेवेन्यू, एंड इन केस ऑफ कैपिटल दिस जनरली इंक्लूड बोरोविंग्स ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. ठीक है, एक्सपेंडिचर्स, रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर्स आर एक्सपेंडिचर ऑन डे टू डे फंक्शनिंग ऑफ वेरियस गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट्स. ठीक है, कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर्स आर जनरली एक्सपेंडिचर ऑन क्रिएटिंग लॉन्ग टर्म एसेट. ठीक है, तो जो भी हमारे आपके जैसे आपका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर रिलेटेड हो या अदर्स हो, तो उन पे जो एक्सपेंडिचर्स आपके होते हैं, दे आर कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. ठीक है, सो कैपिटल इनकम इज बेसिकली बोरोविंग, एंड वी इन्वेस्ट दैट पर्टिकुलर अमाउंट इन कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर्स विद अ हायर रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट. ठीक है, और हायर रेट ROI, ठीक है, रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट. ठीक है, सो बेसिकली व्हाट गवर्नमेंट दे जनरली डू, they generally borrow money from public or domestic as well as international market, and they lend that particular one or invest that particular one in capital expenditure like creation of dam, road, highways, airports, and the return on these particular investment is higher than the borrowed one. And like being a developing nations, we have to work on so many areas. So the like we generally relies on deficit financing, and like बेसिकली अभी बहुत सारे ऐसे एरियाज है जहां पे काम करना होता है गवर्नमेंट को. ठीक है, तो वो क्या कर रहे होते हैं, पैसा बोरो करके वहां पे इन्वेस्ट कर रहे होते हैं. ठीक है, जो अदर रिसोर्सेज आपके हैं लाइक लैंड, लेबर एंड एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप, so they are mobilizing those particular one after borrowing the next resource which is money from the public or from the domestic as well as international market. So now the question is around the receipt. ठीक है, so which of the following statement is correct regarding the receipt? So we have two type of receipt. One is revenue receipt, another one is आपका capital receipt. So revenue receipt which include tax and non-tax, and capital receipt which generally include the borrowings of the government. ठीक है, so okay, quickly go through this particular one. So net tax revenue is calculated after deducting the state share and natural calamity. There is one full form, I just missed this one. Natural calamity contingency duty. ठीक है, so natural calamity contingency duty transferred from the gross tax revenue. ठीक है, this is 100% true. So how we calculate net tax revenue? after deducting state shares minus आपका state shares and आपका natural calamity contingent duty from the gross revenue. So we reach to net revenue of the government. Okay. Interest receipt, dividends and profit are part of non-tax revenue, 100% true. Okay. So this is tax revenue, this is non-tax revenue. Okay. So interest receipt on the loans or dividends received on the shareholdings of the government or profit, these are generally categorized under the non-tax revenue. Disinvestment receipt are classified as debt receipt under capital receipt. No, these are the non-debt receipt. Okay? They are part of capital income or capital receipt, but they are non-debt. Okay? So they are not the debt one, they are non-debt. Basically, in case of disinvestment, what government is doing, they are selling stake in the public sector enterprises, right? तो जैसे उन्होंने LIC के अंदर stake sell किया, and they do not have to pay any interest on that particular one. So that's why that is generally categorized as non-debt revenue, right? So statement third is wrong. Market borrowings and external debt are example of debt receipt. 100% true. So market borrowings, like the government, they issue some bonds in domestic market or it can be in international market. Total receipt include total revenue receipt, capital receipt and drawdown from the cash. Okay. Total receipt include total revenue, total capital and drawdown of the cash balances. So this is also correct. So what will be your correct answer? 1, 2, 4, 5. 1, 2, 4, 5 means आपका option B will be right answer for this particular one. So only statement incorrect was आपका disinvestment receipt are non-debt receipt. So they are not debt because we do not have to pay any interest. Or government, they are not raising any liability through those particular one. Okay? So where you, like in case of bonds or in case of market borrowings, you have to pay regular interest to the depositors or investors. But in this particular case, you are selling stake, you are selling ownership in the form of equity to the general public. So you do not have to pay any interest on those particular accounts. So let's have a look, guys. So if you talk about the receipt of the government, so we have revenue receipt, which includes tax revenue. So which include corporate taxes, corporation taxes, taxes paid by the companies, income tax paid by the individuals and companies, wealth tax आपका, goods and service tax GST, which is part of the indirect tax, and it is further categorized among three parts: CGST, SGST, and IGST. Other taxes which are not part of GST system, so they categorize under other taxes and duties. Customs, union excise duties, largely replaced by GST. But if anyone who is not part of this, then we have service tax. Again, it cover under the GST. Taxes of the union territories. So net tax revenue is gross tax revenue minus NCCD, transfer of national calamity contingency funds, minus state shares. So how we calculate net tax? Please do remember this. So it is gross tax. This is the gross tax overall आपका, taxes from different sources, direct and indirect, minus NCCD, which is transfer to national calamity contingency funds, minus state shares. Okay, so this is the आपका tax revenue. Non-tax revenue, so total non-tax revenue, which include interest receipt, dividend and profit, external grants. Grants is basically, let's say IMF or World Bank, they provided some money, or any other economy who is helping Indian economy, they are lending some money in Indian economy and they are not asking for any interest. It can be like we do have conditions associated with the grants. Sometimes it is like you do not have to pay the entire principal as well as there is no interest. Sometimes you just have to return the principal amount after a certain time duration and you do not have to pay any interest on that particular one. Okay? So these kind of things, they generally comes under the external grants. Other non-tax revenue like penalties and all these imposed by the government. Receipt of union territories. Total revenue receipt is now net tax revenue, which we calculated from the previous one, plus total non-tax revenue, so adding by this particular one. Okay, so net tax revenue was this, आपका ग्रॉस टैक्स रेवेन्यू माइनस आपका ट्रांसफर टू नेशनल कैलेमिटी कंटिजेंसी फंड्स and state shares. After adding these particular one, will reach to the total revenue receipt, right? Capital receipt आपका basically these are borrowings of the government. It can be based on non-debt and आपका debt. ठीक है? So non-debt आपका, if you talk about the non-debt receipt, so recoveries of loan and advances, disinvestment receipt. ठीक है? In case of debt आपका market borrowings, government securities, treasury bills, securities against small savings, state provident funds, other receipt like internal debt and public accounts, and आपका external debt. Debt we generally take from the IMF, World Bank, or it can be from some other country where we are paying some sort of interest on that particular amount itself, right? So this is आपका revenue receipt plus your capital receipt. Okay? So that make the total income or the total receipt of the government itself, right? So then if you talk about the expenditures, so we have plan and non-plan expenditures. Okay? So basically earlier it used to be plan and non-plan during that 5-year plan, but now it is the second part, expenditure. So we have two type of budget: revenue expenditure, expenditure on day-to-day activities or functioning of various government departments like salaries, rent, electricity, and everything. Same. The another one is capital expenditure, creation on permanent asset. Okay? So that is the one. So revenue expenditure, central plan and central assistance for state and union territories, okay, under planning commission. Under I just missed that word name. Okay. So, okay, capital expenditures, which is central plan, and आपका central assistance for state and union territories plan. So, central plan which generally include, if you talk about the central plan, it include expenditures. Like while government they come up with the different schemes, or mostly it is आपका for the long term period. Okay. Central assistance for state and UT under the it is known as planning commission or something. There is one finance commission, sorry. Okay. So that is the one, okay, which generally comes under this one. Okay. So same आपका we have for revenue, we have for capital. See, revenue is basically running these particular or operating those particular things, and it is something आपका, this is like the expenditure happen in the same years, in the year we generated that income, and this is for the mostly it is for the long term purpose, right? So plan expenditure, revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure, total expenditure, total non-plan expenditure plus total plan expenditure, that generally comes under this one. Okay, chalo, next one guys. So next question is identify the correct statement regarding non-plan expenditure. So this we discussed previously. Okay. So okay, just quickly go through this one. So interest payment and pension are part of the revenue expenditure. No, interest payments and pensions are part of revenue expenditure. Team. Correct है team. Loan to public enterprises fall under loan to public enterprises fall under capital expenditure, not in revenue expenditure. So this is wrong. Team. Defense expenditure appear in both revenue as well as capital expenditure. True. Subsidies like fertilizer, food, or petroleum are classified under revenue expenditure. Loan to foreign governments are part of revenue expenditure. No. Again, this is capital expenditure. So this is categorized as capital expenditure, and this is also capital expenditure. Okay? So this is also wrong. So 134. 134 means option C should be right answer for this particular one. Okay? So statement 2 was wrong. Loan to public enterprise fall under capital expenditure, and after statement 5, loan to foreign governments are part of capital expenditure, not the revenue. Okay? Which we generally discuss through those 2-3 slides also. Okay? So यहाँ पे आपका we have this detailed solution for this one also. Okay? So expenditures, non-plan expenditures. Okay? So revenue expenditures interest payment and interest premium on the borrowings. So basically every year government, they used to come up with a deficit budget. So we are borrowing money from the market. It can be domestic or international. So we have to pay interest on those particular borrowings. Defense आपका, ठीक है, it also categorized under the आपका revenue expenditure. Subsidies आपका जैसे fertilizers, food, petroleums, grant to state and UTs आपका, pension, police, assistance to states, assistance to states from National Calamity Contingency Fund, economic services like agriculture, industry, power, transport, communication, science and technology, etc. Okay. General service, organ of state, tax collections, external affairs, departments basically, or the offices. Okay. Social services like education, healthcare, broadcasting, so where government provides some sort of subsidies, as well as it can be for free also. So obviously government is going to make some expenses on that particular one. So if government is providing free education, there is some expenses involved in that particular one at government side. Okay? So they generally comes under this postal deficit. Then we have expenditure to expenditure of union territories without legislature, amount met for national calamity contingency fund, ग्रांट टू फॉरेन गवर्नमेंट्स इफ एनी. ठीक है. सो अगर हमने किसी दूसरे कंट्री को आपका कोई ग्रांट, जैसे वी गिव टू आपका श्रीलंका और बांग्लादेश और मालदीव्स सो मेनी टाइम, ठीक है, तो वो आपका इसमें आएगा. ठीक है. कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर्स आपका डिफेंस, आपका अदर नॉन प्लान कैपिटल आउटले, ठीक है, लोन टू पब्लिक एंटरप्राइजेस, लोन टू स्टेट एंड यूटीज, लोन टू फॉरेन गवर्नमेंट्स एंड अदर्स. ठीक है. नॉन प्लान एक्सपेंडिचर रेवेन्यू, it is total non-plan expenditure is equal to revenue total plan expenditure plus capital non-plan expenditures, that is the total of this one. ठीक है. चलो next one guys, which of the following is included under both revenue and capital expenditure in plan expenditure. ठीक है. So what will be your correct answer? आपका central assistance for state and union territories, yes. Postal, no. आपका postal was not part of this one, ना, ठीक है. Defense was part of this, ठीक है. So basically if you talk about the postal, that generally comes under the revenue, ठीक है. So it is in revenue, हाँ, it is in revenue, ठीक है. So defense आपका C, defense is part of this one, ठीक है. And your the other one is आपका to state and others, they generally comes under this. Subsidies and interest payments, again this is revenue, ठीक है. So what will be your correct answer? A only will be right answer for this one. Central assistance for state and union territory, which is part of your revenue as well as your capital. This we discussed in our first slide itself. Okay? So option A will be right answer for this one. Next one. Okay, deficit आपका, this is a bit important. So, this is the final subtopic which is part of your curriculum. So आपका deficit का concept. So we have revenue deficit. Revenue deficit means differences between income and expenditures. So let's say your income is 100, your expenditure are 120. Your income, revenue income is 100, your revenue expenditures are 120. So the 20 rupees is revenue deficit. ठीक है. So जो sources आपके हैं जहां से you are earning money, अगर वो क्या है आपका कम है, आपका instead of the expenses we are bearing on those particular sources, that is revenue deficit. Okay? So it is the excess of revenue expenditure over receipt. Okay? Effective revenue deficit is revenue deficit minus grant in aid for creation of capital asset. Okay? Fiscal deficit, the most important one, okay, is the excess of total expenditure including loans, net recoveries over revenue receipt, including external grants and non-debt receipt. Okay? So fiscal deficit, which include excess of total expenditure including loans, आपका net of recoveries over revenue receipt plus आपका non-debt receipt. Okay? Primary deficit is आपका is differences between your fiscal deficit and interest payment. Okay? So the overall fiscal deficit minus your आपका interest payment. So the difference is generally known as primary deficit. The net RBI credit to central government is the sum of increase in the Reserve Bank of India's holding of treasury bills, Government of India dated securities, rupee coins and loans and advances from RBI to central government since April 1st, 1997, adjusted for change in center's cash balance with the RBI itself. Okay, so we have a separate account with this particular one where we generally, like if RBI have issued some sort of treasury bills or dated government securities or rupee coins or a loan in advances from to the central government, so they generally get adjusted in this particular one on year basis, right? So next question, guys. Okay, next question is based on deficit itself. Okay. Consider the following statement regarding different type of deficit. Effective revenue deficit from revenue deficit after deducting grant and aid for creation of capital asset. True. Fiscal deficit represent the total borrowings requirements of the governments in a financial year, because fiscal deficit, true. Primary deficit can be negative if interest payment exceed to a fiscal deficit. Primary deficit can be negative if the interest payment exceed to our fiscal deficit. It can be negative. So fiscal deficit represent the total borrowings requirement of governments. Okay, I have to check this one. 1 and 3 or okay, just A aapka. 1 and 2 aapka. Okay, so this statement is wrong. Primary deficit. Okay, just check this one. Statement 3. Primary deficit is a fiscal deficit minus interest payment. Okay. Fiscal deficit minus interest payments. It cannot be negative due to interest payment exceeding fiscal deficit. If interest payment are higher than the fiscal deficit, the primary deficit will simply zero or a surplus. Okay. We took it wrong way. So these two statements are correct and this is wrong, and we have to go through this particular one. Fiscal deficit, sorry, the next question, second statement was around fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit is expenditure loan. Okay, now it is clear. Primary deficit is the difference between fiscal and interest, and if interest payment exceed to the fiscal, so it will be in zero or आपका in surplus itself. ठीक है? So this is it, guys. तो बहुत ही छोटा सा around we have 2 or 3 subtopic which are generally part of this particular one. ठीक है? Receipt, expenditures, and deficit. These are the 3 subtopics, and we practice all the subtopics with the help of statement-based questions and the other part also. I hope this is clear to all of you, team. And with this, we have done with the entire IE and IFS subject. ठीक है? तो सारे मॉड्यूल के सारे टॉपिक्स जिनको हमने आपका डिस्कस कर लिया, ठीक है. And I'm also providing you the compiled version of all these particular videos. The reason behind the compiled videos is basically, see, now we have very less time in our hand. So what you have to do now, if you'll go with unit wise and all, so it will take lots of time. If let's say if you have already read these particular thing, if you have doubt about the specific topic, then go for the unit wise. Otherwise, if you are starting off fresh, पहली बार अगर आप तैयारी करें थोड़ा लेट हो गया है, तो what you can do, morning you can watch the concept video, concept summary of 5 hours, 7 hours. You can play in a speed of 2x or 1.7x. The another one, evening you can practice these particular one. So again आपका you'll get a video of 7 hours, 8 hours apart from that module D, because module D which includes 17 units. ठीक है, तो वो उसी तरीके से आपको इनको बैलेंस आउट करना है. ठीक है, तो रेगुलर बेसिस पे आपका पढ़िए, पहले आपका समरी, देन आपका यूनिट वाइज, देन गो फॉर द आपका प्रैक्टिस. ठीक है, सो प्रैक्टिस, फॉर प्रैक्टिस यू कैन, आई हैव क्रिएटेड वन सेपरेट बैच फॉर प्रैक्टिस ओनली. ठीक है, so where you will get unit wise mock and module wise mock and full mock, along with the PDFs of all the sessions which I have taken in the past 1 month. So like during your daytime also you can attempt those particular mock n number of time. जितनी बार आप पढ़ोगे, practice करोगे, so we have detailed solutions with each and every questions. तो इस तरीके से regular basis पर अगर आप चीजों को revise करते हैं, they are definitely going to help you out in your upcoming examination. All right, guys. So this is it from my side. Thank you for joining this session. Thank you for watching this session. And I'm very happy that we have done with IE and IFS subject. So now from next week onwards, we are going to start our practice around the IE and IFS as well as AFM. And till that time, we'll be covering PPP on regular basis. And from 15 onwards, we'll be having regular session on RBWM also. All right. So this is it from my side. Thank you for joining this session. Thank you for watching this session. Bye bye. Take care all and all the very best for your preparation, guys. Thank you.